In the dimly lit archives of the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, Professor Elena Weiss carefully removed the dusty folder from its resting place. After 20 years of Jungian scholarship, she had gained rare access to Jung's personal journals, including several that had never been published. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the brittle pages dated 1946, discovering what appeared to be the beginning of a theoretical framework Jung had never completed. The feminine archetype holds a power over the masculine that transcends mere attraction, Jung had written. It is perhaps the most profound psychological influence in human history, yet remains largely unexamined. I hesitate to publish these thoughts, as they may be misunderstood in our current intellectual climate. Elena's heart raced. What she held might change our understanding of Jung's entire body of work. David Chen, Elena's doctoral student, was skeptical when she first shared her discovery. Jung already wrote extensively about anima and animus, he argued during their meeting in Elena's book-lined office at the university. "This is different," Elena insisted, spreading the photocopied pages across her desk. "He's not just talking about the feminine aspect within men. He's exploring how women embody archetypal power that shapes masculine consciousness itself. Look at this passage about what he calls the mirror effect. How men see their potential wholeness reflected in women, creating both fascination and fear." David leaned forward, his academic skepticism giving way to curiosity. If this is authentic, it would recontextualize his entire theory of psychological development and explain why he never published it, Elena added. In post-war Europe, these ideas would have been revolutionary. Elena and David spent weeks tracing references in Jung's known works that might connect to this hidden theory. Their research led them to Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, particularly how feminine archetypes appeared consistently across cultures. He suggests here that women are more naturally connected to the collective unconscious, David noted one evening as they worked late in the university library. Not superior, but differently attuned. Elena nodded. Jung believed women often had easier access to intuition and emotional intelligence, qualities he valued deeply but saw Western society undervaluing. What's fascinating is how he connects this to power dynamics. The power to shape men's self-perception, David murmured, reading further, to be both the inspiration and the judge of masculine development. Professor James Harrington from Princeton challenged Elena's findings when she presented them at a psychology conference in Vienna. "This sounds more like your interpretation than Jung's actual theory," he said dismissively during the Q&A. Elena displayed a slide with Jung's own handwriting. Jung writes here about the mirror effect, how women reflect back to men their deepest selves, both the shadow and the light. This creates a unique power dynamic where men seek validation and completion through women's perception. Later, at the conference reception, James approached Elena with a more conciliatory tone. "I've been researching Jung's correspondence with Marie-Louise von Franz," he admitted. "There are passages that might support your theory. Would you be interested in collaboration?" The circle of Jungian scholars was beginning to take notice. Elena traveled to James's office at Princeton, where he shared his collection of Jung's letters to Marie-Louise von Franz, his close student and collaborator. Jung was fascinated by how the mother archetype shaped men's relationship to all women, James explained. He believed men's earliest experiences with their mothers created templates for how they perceived feminine power throughout life. Elena noted how Jung distinguished between the literal mother and the mother archetype. He's saying here that even men who had difficult relationships with their actual mothers still respond to the archetypal feminine in ways they don't fully understand. "Exactly," James said. "And this creates both vulnerability and resentment. The power women hold isn't about manipulation, it's about embodying something men both need and fear." David organized a symposium at the university featuring Elena's work. Scholars from around the world attended, including Dr. Sophia Patel, a Jungian analyst from Mumbai who had studied the cross-cultural implications of anima projection. What Professor Weiss has discovered explains much about how men project their anima, their inner feminine, onto women, Sophia explained during her presentation. Jung believed this projection creates an almost magical quality in romantic attraction. Men often fall in love not with the actual woman, but with their own soul image reflected in her. During the evening reception, Sophia shared her clinical observations. I see this in therapy constantly. Men who cannot integrate their feminine aspects become either controlled by women or controlling of them. Jung's hidden theory explains why patriarchal systems paradoxically coexist with men's psychological dependency on female approval. Elena's research led her to Jung's analyses of mythology and folklore, where feminine power appeared in dual aspects, the nurturing goddess and the destructive witch. Jung noted that men's ambivalence toward female power created these split archetypes, Elena explained to her graduate seminar. The same feminine energy that creates life can also take it away. The woman who inspires can also judge and reject. Male student raised his hand. So Jung believed men's fear of women's power led to these polarized images. Precisely, Elena replied. And these images still influence modern relationships. When a man feels rejected by a woman, the goddess can transform into a witch in his perception, revealing his psychological dependency on her validation. James Harrington invited Elena to co-author a paper examining Jung's understanding of eros, the principle of relationship and connection, as predominantly feminine. Jung saw logos, rational thought, as the masculine principle, James explained during their collaboration. But he considered eros potentially more powerful. Logic may build systems, but relationship gives life meaning. Elena nodded. And in these unpublished notes, Jung suggests that women's greater comfort with eros gives them profound influence over men, who often struggle to acknowledge their own emotional needs. Which creates an interesting power dynamic, James mused. Men may control social systems, but women often control the emotional landscape where meaning is found. Jung believed this created both resentment and worship throughout history, Elena added, from goddess cults to witch hunts. David's doctoral thesis expanded on Elena's discoveries, focusing on Jung's thoughts about how men integrate the feminine within themselves. Jung's hidden theory suggests that healthy masculinity requires acknowledging women's power without being dominated by it, David presented to his committee. Men must recognize the projection of their anima onto women and reclaim these aspects within themselves. Dr. Martina Kraft, a committee member, questioned him. Are you suggesting Jung believed men need to become more like women? Not exactly, David replied. Jung believed each person must integrate their contrasexual aspects while maintaining their primary identity. For men, this means acknowledging feminine qualities, intuition, emotional intelligence, relational thinking, without abandoning masculine strengths. And how does this relate to women's power over men? She pressed. Women hold power over men who haven't completed this integration, David explained. Jung's unpublished theory suggests that men's psychological development is often catalyzed by relationships with women who embody what they haven't yet recognized in themselves. Elena was invited to speak at a conference on gender studies in London, where her work received mixed reactions. Some might interpret this hidden theory as reinforcing essentialist views of gender, challenged Dr. Rebecca Thompson during the discussion panel. Jung was certainly a product of his time, Elena acknowledged, but what makes these notes remarkable is how he questioned his own cultural assumptions. He recognized that what we call feminine power is really about wholeness and integration, qualities available to everyone, regardless of gender. Still, Rebecca argued, framing this as women's power over men seems problematic. The power Jung describes isn't about domination, Elena clarified. It's about the profound psychological impact that occurs when one person embodies qualities another has rejected in themselves. Historically, this dynamic has often played out between women and men due to cultural conditioning. But Jung hints that he saw this as a stage in collective psychological development, not an eternal truth. As Elena's work gained recognition, she began receiving letters from people around the world who found personal meaning in Jung's hidden theory. One evening, alone in her study, she opened an email from a retired businessman named Thomas. "Your work helped me understand my lifelong pattern with women. I've always been drawn to strong, intuitive women, then found myself both worshipping and resenting them. At 70, I finally see that I've been seeking qualities I needed to develop in myself." Elena was moved by how theoretical ideas could transform personal understanding. Jung had always intended his psychology to help individuals find wholeness. Perhaps this hidden theory had remained unpublished because Jung himself was still wrestling with its implications in his own life. 5 years after discovering the manuscript, Elena published a comprehensive book titled The Mirror Effect, Jung's Hidden Theory of Feminine Power. The book included not only Jung's unpublished writings, but contributions from scholars around the world who had expanded on these ideas. At the book launch in Zurich, just steps from where Jung had once worked, Elena reflected on the journey. What began as an academic discovery has become a conversation about human wholeness, she told the gathered audience. Jung believed that psychological development, both individual and collective, moves toward integration of all aspects of the self. David, now a professor himself, raised his glass in a toast to Carl Jung, who had the courage to question his own assumptions even when he wasn't ready to publish them. And to the continuing dialogue between masculine and feminine energies, Elena added, not as a battle for power, but as a dance toward wholeness. As twilight fell over Zurich, the conversation continued, just as Jung would have wanted, always questioning, always seeking deeper understanding of the human psyche and all its complexity.